Hello, welcome back to another SeniorLiving.Org live stream. If this is your first time, my name is Taylor Schumann. I'm the editor-in-chief, the editor and the senior tech expert at SeniorLiving.Org. And today I'm joined by Dr. Macie P. Smith. Welcome, Dr. Macie.
Thank you for having me, Taylor. It's always a pleasure to chat with you and all the folks out there in digital land.
Oh, I love it. Yes, I'm excited for another one of our Q&As. Today, we're going to be talking about advanced care directives, what they are, how to use them, all the good things. But we'll just let people trickle in over the next few minutes. If you're here, feel free to drop a hello in the chat just so we know that you are here and ready to get going. And we'll get started soon.
Yeah, we like hellos and we like how you doing. We want to know how your day is going, how your
Yes.
weekend was. We want to get all in your business.
Yes, tell us all the things. I love it. All right, it looks like a few more people are starting to trickle on into the room. So we will go ahead and get started. As I said, my name is Taylor and I am here with Dr. Macie P. Smith. And today we are talking about advanced care directives. But first, I would love to introduce you to Dr. Macie. She is the best. She is a best-selling author known for her work on dementia competent practices and family caregiving matters. Her real-world, unapologetic approach to practical caregiving has been published in national and international professional journals and syndicated news articles. She is a licensed gerontology social worker and an award-winning Alzheimer's and dementia educator with over 25 years of experience coordinating care for aging and vulnerable populations. And honestly, that's just the beginning of her resume. But just to give you a little bit of a taste, welcome, Dr. Macie. It's always so good to have you with us.
Thank you. I always enjoy our engaging conversations. You guys do a really good job of getting right to the meat and the core of things. So let's get started.
Thank you. Yes. Well, with that, let's do it. So Dr. Macie is here to answer any questions you have about advanced care directives. You can drop them in the chat, and I see a few of you starting to use the chat. So thank you for that, and welcome on in. If you want to participate, just make sure you're logged into a YouTube account so that you can join that chat. And also, if you have any just general questions about dementia or senior care or caregiving, Dr. Macie is an expert in those fields. So we can totally get off on a couple little tangents. Never mind a little tangent.
All right. I love a little tangent.
Yes. So anything you guys want to know, I think this is going to be a really great topic. So we'll just go ahead and dive right in. So Dr. Macie, can you tell me what exactly is an advanced care directive and why is it so important for families and seniors?
So I'm going to back up a little bit before we even get to the advanced care directive, which is the document that is enforced or in place. I want to start by talking about advanced care planning. Right? So advanced care planning, it is exactly what it says. As I am advancing in age, what do I want to see my care look like? You want to be the curator of your care. You want to be the decision maker of who takes care of you, what decisions should be made, how those decisions should be made, what considerations to make. And a lot of times, Taylor, people don't even want to talk about the planning of it because, so I'm from the South and we believe in the power of the tongue. If you like say it, it's going to happen. So that's the older people. I'm not like that because I'm going to talk about it. Like, you know, when you talk to your parent or your grandparent or your great aunt or what have you, and you start to have the attempt to have the conversation about what do you want to happen to you after you die, or even if you're on your deathbed. I don't want to talk about it. I'm only 78. I got a long time to live, right? So you got to start having the conversation. Actually, in many cases, the conversation is more important than the document because there are several different types of documents, and we'll get into that and the storing of the documents. But you want to have the conversation about who you want to provide care for you in the event you are not able to make a decision yourself, whether that be verbally, whether it be in written documentation. If you're not able to do that, who do you want to make that decision for you, or those decisions? And there is no right or wrong time because all of us are illness, an accident, an injury away from needing this document in place. So having the conversation with trusted members of your family, having the conversations with members of your family who are not trusted, you're going to go ahead and let them know you are not going to be making decisions on my behalf. I don't care how you hoop and holler. You're not the one. But getting that okay from someone who you trust and someone who has made the decision to say yes in your absence, and when I say absence, I mean cognitively, or well, it's not even really physically, it's cognitively. If you're cognitively unable to make decisions on your behalf, whether that's, health, whether that's finances, um, uh, property, any type of legacy um, information, this person has agreed to make the decision. And so now that you've had the conversation, now it's time to execute documents. And what are those documents? They're documents that you put in place to ensure that your wishes are fulfilled as you advance in age, when you're not able to make the decision for yourself. And you know that you cannot enforce a document when you're not able, so you have to do it prematurely and in advance. So you're making the planning in advance for your care as you age, really as you live and experience life.
I love that. So you talked about the most important part before we even get into the advanced care directives is having those conversations. So do you have any tips for how to start those conversations, what you should cover in the conversation, just how to kind of dip our toes in the water?
So there are going to be two different types of conversations to have. It's going to be the conversation you're going to have with the folks who you want to make decisions on your behalf. And then there's going to be a conversation that you're going to have with someone else to get their documents in place. So let's start with the conversation that you're going to have. That should be happening right now. Actually, should have already happened. If you're tuning in here, if you're on this live anywhere with us, including you, Miss Taylor, you should already be having that conversation, right? And lives change, situations change. So you may be having a conversation more than one time. So you want to find out, number one, assess your circle. It could be your natural circle of support, or it could be your logical circle of support. So it could be people that you have drawn close to, could be friends, it could be coworkers who you've developed a bond with, especially when you encounter families that are very, very small, that who don't have a daughter or a spouse or a sibling. They will have to figure out who's going to make decisions on their behalf. Now, if they don't have any family member to identify as a decision maker, then they may not have an advanced care directive. And we'll talk about that later on, what happens when someone does not have an advanced care directive. So you've had this conversation, you've identified someone, now you're going to look at the different documents to take place. Now, the conversation you have with someone who is probably older, or someone who does not have those documents in place, how do you have the conversation with them? Well, it depends on the person. So if it's my spouse, I'm going to say, if you don't put your documents in place, I'm going to do what I want to do with you, right? That might be a little threat. So you have a different conversation with your spouse. Have a little pillow talk. They'll be more apt to develop the directive, or you say you'll develop it for them, and all they have to do is sign it. But someone who's older and who's independent and who may not like to have that conversation, it may be a little bit more difficult. And so you want to start having the conversations during natural events, such as breakfast, lunch, or dinner. It's always good to have these types of conversations over food when people are happy, their bellies are full, you have their undivided attention. Or if you're just visiting and you're simply chatting, chat about your experience with what those documents look like. So that way they'll know it's not just me. You're not just, targeting me to get these documents done, because they may be a little suspicious of you. You trying to knock me off. I'm not giving you nothing. We're not having this conversation. So you got to know the person, the characteristic and the personality of the person that you're talking to. And as you're starting to have this conversation on a more regular basis during natural settings and occurrences, then you'll be taking small steps. Not that you go in, mama, you need to get this living will done today. Let's go. No, you threw it on her too fast, talking to your dad and say, hey, we need to go down to the lawyer's office and get this paperwork done. No, start having a conversation, start planning, And then you're taking steps toward getting into that attorney's office, because you want to be sure that they're able to make as many decisions as possible around their life and around their care. But you're just planting seeds and you're taking steps. And so you want to go ahead and write down the steps to take in order to get these advanced care directives executed, so that way you know how to introduce the steps as you're having the conversation.
That's great. And I love what you said. We want to give the older adults in our lives as much autonomy as they can to make these decisions. So what advice would you give, say, if adult children don't agree with their parents' wishes, if it causes, tension or hurt feelings or whatever that brings up? How do you navigate those family situations?
So I usually say, if you're having this level of drama and you're here and able to direct folks to who's going to be doing what and delineate responsibilities, imagine what's going to happen when you die and there are no documents in place. It's going to be a lot worse. So I really put that into perspective. And in fact, having someone delineate and identify what their needs are in an advanced care directive is a gift. So that way you don't have to figure it out. So if I'm speaking to the person, the older adult who's actually completing the advanced care directive, and the children don't agree with what's written, I'm going to say something. I'm very transparent and I'm very honest. Everybody don't have to know everything. Everybody does not have to know everything. As a matter of fact, if there is tension in the family, and I have seen some drag out fights in families over what mama wants to put in place and who mom wants to be the decision maker. When I see that type of tension in a family and that type of family drama, I talk with the older adult and who they want to be the decision maker. We three have the conversation. They execute the document. Nobody else in the family knows until they need to know. So that's when it will need to be on a need to know basis, because there's no need to bring up, all of that strife if it's not necessary, because you know what type of family you got. You know who's going to get to showing out. You know who's going to make the trouble. And the person that makes the most trouble is really the person who's least responsible. They just ain't going to do the right thing. So you know how the squeaky wheel? They're the squeaky wheel, and they're not going to do the right thing. And so it needs to be a conversation had between the person who's executing the document and who they trust as the decision maker or the agent of the document.
That makes sense. And you mentioned, having these conversations, even if they're difficult, is way more important to do than just leaving this to a point where they don't have an advanced care directive after the loved one passes. So what does happen if you don't have an advanced care directive when you pass?
So if the person is in the hospital and they're on life support, if they don't have, two different scenarios. They're on life support. They're going to be put on life support if there is not a DNR on file. That is do not resuscitate. So that is a medical order that a doctor would enforce if the person who is experiencing the medical crisis has put this DNR in place. If that DNR is not in place, they're going to be placed on life support, because the hospital's responsibility is to save lives, unless there's an order that says if they're going, they're going, don't bring them back, right? So if there's not a DNR in place and they're on life support, they're going to ask whoever is up there, because somebody's going to be up there, does the person have an advanced care directive? If they do not have an advanced care directive, in many states, and the title of this law may vary state to state, but on the books in every state there is Adult Healthcare Consent Act. So an Adult Healthcare Consent Act, it is the law, and it actually lists the people in order by priority who would be contacted to make decisions on this person's behalf, whether they're on life support or they're cognitively impaired severely and cannot make a decision on their behalf, it starts with the spouse, then it goes to the adult children, then it goes to the siblings, then it goes to the cousins, then it goes to the play cousins. And the very last person on that list is if the person is in a nursing facility or an assisted living, or they're in some type of residential care setting, then it defaults to the director of that residential care setting. Because I worked for 18 years in a governmental agency that provided support for adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities, when we think about our senior population who is also intellectually disabled, many of them, Taylor, did not have family members. In fact, many of them don't even have birth certificates. And if they had a birth certificate, the name on it was baby girl or big boy. Like, I was like, they can't get no voter registration card with big boy and baby girl. And so a lot of times I was the person who would have to make decisions on their behalf when it comes to medical, when it comes to finances, because number one, they were intellectually impaired, so they could not make decisions on their behalf, and they had no family member on record, right? So the Adult Healthcare Consent Act would be enforced if there is no advanced care directive. So just imagine that spouse really ain't no longer the spouse. So Taylor, you out in California, but I'm from the South, and we have like common law marriages, which I don't even think that's on the books anymore. Y'all correct me if I'm wrong. It used to be common law. If somebody spent one night with you in your house, that's your husband or that's your wife, right? Yes.
That's crazy.
It is. I mean, it could be good. It could be a blessing. It could be, a detriment.
Mm-hmm.
So that's no longer on the books. But in several states, there still is common law. And then you have people who have been divorced for 45 years, but never got an actual divorce. They're divorced in public. They're divorced by word of mouth. They did not put anything official on paper. And this man has a new common law wife because he can't marry her if he's still married to my mama, And so now that person is going to be responsible for making decisions on your behalf. And he shacked up with another woman. So if that's not reasonable enough to execute those documents. Now, if they've gone through the list that's delineated in the Adult Healthcare Consent Act, now what the hospital would do, they have an ethics board. Now they have to go to the ethics board and assemble around a table the physician, any surgeons, any specialists, any nurses, any personal care aides, everybody who has a hand in providing care while they're at the hospital. They're sitting around this table and they're going to make a decision. I used to watch House religiously. Do you remember House, Taylor?
Yes, that was a good one.
That was a good one. So just like House, except I've never met a doctor that's as like loopy as House.
Yes.
But just like that is exactly what happens if there is no advanced care directive in place and or if there is absolutely no family available.
Gosh, I can just imagine the drama that must cause if, the paperwork doesn't know all the family drama and the dynamics like we just talked about. So this is so important.
And I'll tell you, a decision that I had to make one time. The young lady was on life support, and there was not a DNR on file. So when I say there was not a DNR on file, that means the hospital where the young lady was did not have a DNR on file. And so, of course, they're going to save her life. Like, she's going to be on life support, and I'm going to leave her on life support until the Lord says she don't need to be on life support anymore. Well, a family member came out of nowhere with a DNR in hand. So that family member had the DNR, but nobody else had the DNR. And the young lady actually went to the hospital in a different state. It's important to know that there are no repositories for advanced care directives. So a DNR or a post. So a post is a physician's order for life-sustaining treatment, or a post, physician's order for scope of treatment. Those are medical documents that are executed and stored typically at the hospital of choice. If there's an incident in Miami or Atlanta or Chicago and someone goes to the hospital there, that post or DNR is not on file there, and there's not a repository. Now, there has been legislation to start repositories in various states. And I know in South Carolina, we're working toward a repository, also the state of North Carolina. That has not been set in stone yet, but we need a repository. And so when you talk about a repository, that's when you get into the logistics. Who's going to manage it? What software are we going to use? And the biggest question is, you know what that question is? Who's going to pay for it?
That's
Who's going
always
to
a
pay for it?
question.
Where are we getting the manpower? And so that's why it's important, going back to the beginning, to have those advanced care conversations and to have advanced care planning, because they're going to call next of kin.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
But if there's no family on file or no family of record, then the ethics committee is going to make the decision.
Wow. So we've talked about the importance of, deciding who's going to make what decision, having those conversations early. Let's dive a little more into what is included in advanced care directive. So we've talked obviously about a DNR, but what else is there to consider?
So there's a living will, and I will tell you, many attorneys do not like the living will, because the living will is not as detailed as it could be. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the living will, because that's always a challenge for me. But I mean, it's something. You definitely want to have something in place. And these documents that I'm going to talk about, you want to get an elder attorney or a certified attorney to execute these documents, so that way they can be filed in whatever county you live in. These documents need to be filed. Some of them don't have to be, but they need to be filed. So we're going to go through each one of them. So the living will, that's an advanced care directive you can get in place. It's not as detailed as some of the other ones I'm going to talk about, but it is a legal document that will identify your healthcare needs. It also talk about some financial stuff. It'll talk about some property, but it's very limited. But you can get your stuff in there. The healthcare power of attorney only addresses healthcare needs. In many states, you can actually download the healthcare power of attorney and sign it. So like if I'm the decision maker, I sign it, and I have it witnessed, and I have identified in there who I want to make the decision on my behalf. I sign it. I typically would have, if I'm working with a client and just say, we need this document in place sooner than later, they may not have the money to pay a certified elder attorney, which I feel like that is a great investment that you will ever invest in, but they may not be able to afford a certified elder attorney. Or if they don't have, they're not able to get into legal services to get it done in a timely manner, then I will actually execute healthcare power of attorney on behalf of the family. So the decision maker, so in my case, since I work with seniors, it would be a senior. They would go through and tell me, I'll ask all the questions. They would tell me who the person is, to identify. And there's also a secondary person that can also be listed. I talk to that person so that they agree to do it. And the secondary person, the senior who's executing the document, they sign it. I'll have the agents, so the people who have been identified, I'll have them sign as witnesses. I would sign it, and I would get it notarized. In some states, you don't even have to get it notarized. In South Carolina is one of them. That healthcare power of attorney does not even have to be notarized, as long as all the signatures are there. Do I recommend people do that on their own? No, I don't. However, if you are in a tight space and a time crunch, then I absolutely recommend you do it. I've done it several times, but you need to have a certified elder attorney execute those documents. So just say we had to get it done due to whatever reason. I'm going to circle back and say, hey, now let's get this officially executed with a certified elder attorney. There's also a durable power of attorney. A durable power of attorney has to be executed by an attorney. Again, it needs to be a certified attorney that's certified in this area. Any attorney can do it, but I recommend a certified um, advanced care planning attorney or a certified elder attorney, right? So this durable power of attorney, it's going to have healthcare language in there, and it's also going to have financial languages in there, which is very important. Now, when we talk about financial language, the bank still won't, you can give the bank the durable power of attorney, but the bank also has bank documents. There is a it's called something on death. I forgot what it's the first word, but it's something on death that you would need to sign, and you would need to have the decision maker sign. Like I would have my husband sign that. If you don't have that document at the banks or at your financial institution, then you need to have somebody else on that account with you that can make decisions on your behalf, use the money for whatever reason when you're not able to make the decisions. So I'll say, thinking about Wendy Williams' situation, which is in the news, makes national attention. We see it probably weekly. Wells Fargo was right in filing a claim of elder abuse. They have to. By law, if they suspect anything, not that they're doing the investigation, but if they suspect that somebody is misusing someone's money and that person appears to be cognitively impaired and unable to make realistic decisions on their behalf, then they have to report it as financial exploitation. So in that case, somebody else was on her account, but it looked suspicious. It looked questionable. And so if it looked questionable, then they were supposed to do exactly what they did. So when it comes to financial documents, you want to be sure that you're on the financial documents at the bank and you have someone who you trust, in addition to who is identified and written in that durable power of attorney. The durable power of attorney can have a whole bunch of stuff in it. It can have a little bit of stuff in it because you're working with the attorney on identifying what you want in your document. There is another document. I'm looking around to see if I have one. I know it's in here because I just looked at it the other day. It's called Five Wishes. Five Wishes can be ordered. They're like $5 a piece, I think, where they were years ago. You can even download it as well. The Five Wishes, well, I'm going to tell you, the doctors don't like at the hospital. They don't like Five Wishes. However, it is a document. The Five Wishes actually can go into a lot of different details because you can write stuff in it. It's lines. You can write stuff in it. You can even write stuff in it about your funeral, who you want to sing at your funeral, where you want to have your funeral, what type of funeral you want. Do you want to be buried? Do you want to be cremated? Like my husband has said that he said I can cremate him because that's cheaper. Well, that ain't gonna work, boo. Because we have one child together, and I have 3 bonus children. Everybody need to be in this conversation, which is why he needs to write it down. You can't make people write it down. You can't make people execute the document. However, we've had that conversation in front of our shared daughter, and then I've told the rest of them just in case there's a problem. And I'm gonna tell you, when you have bonus children, that can be a problem. You definitely want to have things written down. So worst case scenario, if he doesn't write it down, we're going to bury him because I don't want the prop. So again, this goes back to the conversations and planning, but Five Wishes is blue and white. That is also an advanced care directive that you can put in place. And we've already talked about the medical advanced care directives. That's the DNR, the POST, and the POST. And let me tell you about the DNRs, the medical documents. The ambulance doesn't have it. So a lot of times people will have the document in their drawer. Well, if there is an emergency and the ambulance come, they're not coming in your bedroom and looking in your drawer because number one, they don't know that it's there. So if you have a DNR, if you have a POST or a POST, you want to make sure that your doctor's office has it. You want to make sure that your your hospital of choice has it. And you want to be sure that it's posted somewhere in your home, whereas if the ambulance has to be called, they will see it, preferably on the front of your refrigerator. And that comes into play for people who have life-limiting illnesses or chronic illnesses like Alzheimer's or dementia, congestive heart failure, late stage cancer. So you want to be sure that it is on the front part of your refrigerator, not the side, but the front.
That makes sense. Wow, there's so many things to think about. And, once we've put all these documents together, we've put them on the front of our fridge, our doctor's office has them. MD has a great question of what to do next. She asks, how often should you review or update an advanced care directive? For instance, a yearly basis?
That's an excellent question. If there have been no changes in your life, I would say annually. You don't even have to review it annually, really. If there are no changes, it could be biannually, just to make sure it's still there. Make sure I'm just kind of paranoid. Just make sure that the right person is still on to make sure it still says the same thing. Make sure it's still filed, to make sure the hospital still has it. So annually, biannually. But if you have a change in your life, if you have, significant life changes, you get married, you get divorced, you have children, you develop a chronic illness, you had a bad accident, then it needs to be revisited at that moment.
That makes sense. And just a question about, when you say get taken in to the hospital and they have these advanced care directives on file, how do they interact? I know you mentioned a little bit if you're like in an ambulance, they don't have that information yet, but how does it interact with, say, like emergency medicine? Is it able to override hospital or doctor recommendations if you have these documents on hand?
That is an excellent question. So again, a doctor in a hospital, their primary responsibility is to save life, right? If you have a DNR on file, they're not going to save your life. So those documents, so just say, for example, if the doctor says, we're going to resuscitate her, because if we resuscitate her, I feel like she'll have a better chance at life, right? I feel like she'll live. If there's a DNR on file, by law, they cannot resuscitate her. So these documents trump anything that a doctor would think or would say. So, but again, that timing is everything. If the ambulance comes to the house, they're going to resuscitate if they don't see the DNR. So now they're taking you to the hospital on, the machine, right? And just say they get to the hospital and that's where the DNR is on file. That is just a precarious situation. It really is. And so that's when the hospital would have to communicate with the decision maker in an instance like that. Now, if the person codes again, of course, they won't resuscitate them.
Mm. Yeah, that makes sense. Another one of our viewers. Oh, what were you going to say? Go ahead.
No, I did forget about, just remind me, I want to get to the questions, but remind me to tell you about another advanced care directive in the medical field.
Okay. We have a question about, I'm not sure, I haven't heard of this one, but Migdalia asks, please explain the most
Yeah,
advanced.
I'm getting ready. I'm going to pull it up because that's going to be a medical document too. Let me get the right name for it. And the reason these are different names is because they were introduced in different states. So in South Carolina, we have the POST, Physician's Order on Sustained Treatment. I know in North Carolina, they have the POST, Physician's Order for life sustaining treatment. And let me pull that up. Medical orders for scope of treatment. So it's exactly the same as, again, it's a physician's order. So that's what make those different from the other ones that's executed by an attorney. These are executed by a physician. So it could be what happens at end of life. It could be what happens if I'm unable to make a decision, if I'm incapacitated. So it just depends. Again, some states don't recognize the most, but they might recognize the POST. So it just depends on your state. So that's an excellent question. Thank you for asking that. There is another, and I'm going to see what states have this. There is another advanced care directive, and it's called VSED. VSED. That stands for voluntarily stop eating and drinking. Some states have it, some states do not. So you would have to check with your states. I'm going to tell you, this applies to people who typically are cognitively impaired, or they're cognitively impaired. They still have some abilities, but they may not have other abilities. Where I have seen this come into play is for someone who has late stage dementia or Alzheimer's disease. That's a tricky one because they may not be eating because they don't recognize, they don't see the food. There could be some vision concerns. Or if they see the food, they don't recognize what the food is for, right? Because again, that's Alzheimer's and dementia. Later stages, they're just not able to make the connection. And so what do people tend to do when they know that they're caring for someone with dementia, and they know they probably don't know that it's time to eat? They don't know what eating is, but I know that they need to eat. What do people typically do?
Do they just make them eat? I don't really know. I haven't been in that situation.
You're right. So they will get the food on the spoon and they will put it up to their mouth, and they would kind of move it around in their mouth to get them to open the mouth. If they have a VSED, you have just broken the law. Because they could choke, they could aspirate, right? So it's almost like you're force feeding the person. Now, and this is where in a VSED can get very, very dicey. If they have Alzheimer's and I put the food in front of their face, right? And I put it on a spoon and I have it in front of their mouth, their eyes, so that way they can see that it is food. And there is a technique in Alzheimer's care. It's called mirroring. I eat, then I put it up for you to eat. I didn't put it up to your mouth. I didn't try to wiggle it in, but I did put it up to your mouth. In some cases, families have sued the nursing home or the assisted living and said they were trying to force feed my loved one, and the person has a VSED on file, voluntarily stop eating and drinking. In later stages of dementia, the person will stop eating and drinking. And so when their body shuts down and they don't want to eat, they're not drinking, they're not walking, that is adult failure to thrive, and that tends to happen at the end of life. But it's hard to tell sometimes if the person is at the end of life or if they're in late stages and they just don't recognize that as food. So that's a tricky one.
Yeah, that is tricky. And that kind of brings me to another question I have about kind of dementia related advanced care directives. So how can families balance, respecting their loved one's wishes if they have a loved one with dementia or Alzheimer's, with kind of the evolving realities of their medical needs, just like what you were kind of talking through? How do they balance that?
Well, the conversation should start early because if a person develops dementia, you typically get that diet. First of all, you're going to notice, the person is going to notice anyway. They may not even say anything to you because they start displaying signs 10 to 15, in some cases 20 years before anybody else even notices it or before an official diagnosis. So family members will see, typically, if they miss the early stages, which is very easy to miss, they may see the signs in early to mid stages. It's still early enough for the person to execute the document. It's important that you cannot execute any of these documents on behalf of the person. That's not what it's for. It is their advanced care directive. It is your advanced care directive. It is not your directive on behalf of another person. And so in order for them to execute their document, they have to be able to express their needs, wants, and their desires. So although they have a diagnosis of a progressive type of dementia, right now, they're still able to make decisions on their behalf. So as soon as you, as a family member, loved one, recognize that something may be going on with their memory and their cognitive functioning, whether they have dementia or not, you got enough information to say, Mom, Dad, Auntie, honey, it's time that we get our documents in order so that way our children will know what to do. Our families will know what to do. Not saying, oh, I see you slipping. It's time. Let's go to the lawyer's office and get this document. No, again, having that natural conversation and implicating yourself in it with them so that way it won't look like a target or an attack or, singling them out. But as soon as you, as a family member or loved one, recognize the signs of a potential diagnosis of dementia or Alzheimer's, you want to start having that conversation towards, because again, you're going to write down the steps and you're going to start working towards getting that document executed. Because when they go into the attorney's office to execute the document, the attorney has to document whether or not they feel the person is cognitively intact to make these decisions. Now, when the person has dementia, they're going to be good days and bad days. So if they're one of the ones, they're in the stage of a good day, maybe a bad day. When they have a good day, it's time to take a trip to the attorney's office and make sure you get them something good to eat. It's an outing for them. Make sure it's an enjoyable day, and go ahead and have the elder attorneys, certified elder attorneys. They know how to have the conversations with their loved ones. And in some cases, if it is a certified elder care practice, which those are the ones that I typically work with, they have the elder care attorneys, they have the community advocates, they have healthcare advocates, they have social workers. So in some cases, they'll be able to help you have the conversation with them. So just look for certified elder attorney practices in your area. They may be able to provide you with some support to kind of nudge your loved one along and getting those documents in place.
Yeah, that's great. And I love that what you said about, saying this is about us getting things in order. It's not like we need to do this for you because you're declining. Like that sounds like a
Yeah.
mistake.
Yeah, well, it is. Now you'll have some people who are very receptive and bless their hearts. You would definitely want to wish that your loved one would be that person, but probably it won't be that person, right? So, if they're easygoing and very receptive to your recommendations, then it's a non-issue. It's just a matter of you being able to escort them, accompany them into getting the document executed and knowing the types of documents that exist. But, if it's a person that's going to give you a challenge, I would advise or recommend that you make contact with the certified elder attorney practice and let them know the situation that you're having, and they may be able to offer support.
Yeah, that makes sense. So we've talked about, some of the best practices and things to do and how to have these conversations. But on the flip side, what are some of the most common mistakes you see families or individuals making when they're creating or managing these advanced care directives?
So a couple of things. So I'm a court appointed guardian. So I'll come in if someone has been allegedly abused, neglected, or exploited. Typically, the cases that I have, it's financial exploitation, and it's caused by a family member. Family members are the number one perpetrators of financial exploitation when it comes
Mm.
to elders. Um, and so one of the misconceptions of a durable power of attorney is that the person who's named agent is the decision maker all the time. Those documents are not enforced until the person is cognitively incompetent or impaired and cannot make a decision. If they're able to say that they don't want to go to the hospital, if they're able to say that they're not paying this bill, if they're able to say that I'm not withdrawing any money out of the bank, you cannot override them because they are still cognitively strong. The mental acuity is there. They can make decisions on their behalf. So a lot of times family members think if they have the healthcare power of attorney and the durable power of attorney, they can make their loved ones do what they say do. That's a no-no. It doesn't work. And that is the most common concern that I encounter when it comes to these documents. We want you to get the documents in place. And when I say we want you to get the documents in place, we want the person who is writing the document or executing it, we want them to have those documents in place in the event of, but it's important that the agents, the person who will make decisions on the person's behalf, they need to understand what those documents are there for and when they're enforceable. And so you'll have some people, because they have durable power of attorney. In most cases, when I have to go to court, it is financial exploitation, but there's an area of gray there. They don't fully understand the durable power of attorney. And because they don't feel that their loved one makes good decisions, they make those decisions on their behalf. For example, if you have someone that does not have good financial management, money management, and they forego paying their light bill because they want to go to the casino, and then the family member who's the agent of the durable power of attorney, they use that person's money to pay the light bill because that's the right thing to do. That's when we get in muddy waters. because even though you have this document and you did the right thing, it was not the lawful thing because they said, I'm not paying the light bill. And so that's when we have to, decide whether or not the intent. I'm really big on intent. You'll have an attorney come in and say, yes, financial exploitation. But when I come in, I make recommendations in the senior's best interest, right? And I'm going to interview everybody. And I can make a determination right now that this person's intent was good, their heart was good, but now we need to better understand how we got here. And usually 99% of the time, I'm going to bring in a conservator. And that's the person that's going to pay all the person's bills. And then give them, we identify, what all the bills are. And after all the bills are paid, then the person gets the rest of the money and they can do whatever they want to do with it because the bills are paid. But if it's not a case of a full-on, I don't want to say full-on abuse, but if it's not a case of abuse and harm, then I still allow the family member to make healthcare decisions, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess one last question to wrap things up. What is one thing that you wish, say, every caregiver and senior knew about advanced care directives? What would that one thing be?
Number one, that it's not a death sentence, right? So I'm talking to the person who is going to execute the document. It's not a death sentence. And for family caregivers, I want them to know, and I want it to be a part of a routine conversation. I want it to be a part of a routine occurrence to have those documents in place and to review those documents. They're as seamless as going to the grocery store every week. So I want them to know that it's never too early to get these advanced care directives in place for yourself. And it's never too early to start having the conversation, building toward the steps of execution with your loved one who's older.
I love that. And once you make them, it's like kind of set it and forget it until you have life changes. Like you're making things easier for yourself in the long run. So that makes sense.
And again, communicate with your loved one how much of a blessing and a gift it would be. Bring in a case scenario because you got somebody in your neighborhood or in your family, a situation that has occurred that was a complete mess. Use that as an example to encourage them to get it done sooner than later.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. A little bit of scare tactic never hurt anybody.
It doesn't. And it's not, you're not abusing them. It's not psychological abuse at all. It is presenting factual information in order to ensure an informed decision is made. You saw what I did there?
Yes, I like that.
In order for them to make an informed decision, they have to have all the information. And in many cases, an example heightens the understanding.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this has been super helpful, Dr. Macie. I just want to say thank you so much. I feel like I've learned so much, and I'm going to go talk to my partner about these advanced care directives after this.
All right, now don't go in there with a prenuptial because I wasn't talking about those.
We'll skip that for now. We'll just talk about these directives.
Yeah, well, I hope that it was helpful. And I will tell you, Taylor, to be honest with you, this is the most fun I have had talking about advanced care directives and end of life care documents.
I know it's kind of a deep subject, but there's a lot.
Yeah, but it can't be deep. It can't be a dark subject for me because I got to relay the information and I have to relate it in a way that is going to be receptive and that's going to be understandable. And that's most importantly, that's going to be translational.
Yes.
Right. And transactional towards getting it done. And I talk about it a lot, but I'm going to be very transparent. My conversation is tight. I got my conversation, but these people will not execute a document to save their soul. But I got the documentation. I got the conversation. I got the conversation on record, but they will not execute these documents at all. Now, my daddy, he's good, baby. He is good. My mama, on the other hand, she'll say, well, you know what to do. So I know that I'm covered by the Adult Healthcare Consent Act. I know that I'm covered by the conversations that I've had with my loved ones about me and about them, but I still want that document. Oh, but I have oh my God, the 5 wishes. If for nothing else, we have 5 wishes.
Yeah, so that's the biggest takeaway. Get it in writing. Let's not just talk
about it. Let's get it in writing and have witnesses.
Yes. Well, if this brought up any additional questions, please feel free to leave comments on our YouTube video after this. Or if there's any other topics you'd like to hear about from Dr. Macie, don't be afraid to send them our way. We are always open to whatever you guys want to know. That's why we're
Yeah.
here. And just a few resources for you. If this at all felt overwhelming or just kind of opened more questions for you, just know that you're not alone. We have what's called the Caregivers Corner on SeniorLiving.org. And this is our Facebook group where caregivers can connect, they can share their experiences, and seek advice from experts like Dr. Macie. So if you have any additional questions or you just want to talk to someone else who's maybe gone through this with a loved one and filled out these advanced care directives, join our Facebook group. It is an awesome, awesome place to be. And then a second resource that we have is our compassionate caregiving course. So if maybe you are diving headfirst into caregiving for the first time, you're learning about advanced care directives, just how to care for a loved one in general, you can visit SeniorLiving.org/caregiving/courses. It's an introduction to caregiving. It's reviewed by experts, so you can kind of get everything you need to know to get started and to feel comfortable caring for your loved one. And that's all that we have today. So thank you so much, Dr. Macie. This has been really informative and just a good time.
Thank you so much, Taylor. Thank you all for joining, and please take advantage of these resources. They are excellent.